Everyone wants their house to feel current, until the trend you picked starts screaming a date stamp. After watching design trends rise and fall, I have seen the same thing happen. What felt fresh and exciting 3 years ago, but now homes feel generic and dated. Today we're examining 5 trends that dominated recent years, but are heading for the exit. One of them defined an entire generation's aesthetic preferences and changed how people think about home design. And number 1 is the one that makes a room feel chaotic fast, even if everything is expensive. Let's start with the movement that launched 1,000 Pinterest boards. Coming in at number 5, the modern farmhouse aesthetic. This wasn't just a design trend, this was a lifestyle movement. Joanna Gaines showed America that you could blend rustic elements with contemporary living. Shiplap accent walls, reclaimed wood beams, barn doors on sliding hardware, white everything with strategic distressing. The aesthetic promised comfort, simplicity, and that elusive farmhouse charm without actual farm living. I completely understand the appeal. These spaces photographed beautifully. The neutral palette felt safe and universally appealing. You could sell a house with modern farmhouse finishes without worrying about polarizing buyers. Every element felt intentional and accessible. The style showed simplicity, authenticity, and rootedness that resonated deeply with many. The formula became remarkably specific. Start with white walls, not off-white, pure white. Add shiplap to at least one wall, usually behind beds or in living areas. Install wide plank light wood floors or wood-look tile. Replace standard doors with sliding barn doors regardless of whether they made functional sense. Mount oversized galvanized metal light fixtures. Display white dishes on open shelving. Add wire baskets labeled with chalkboard paint. Include at least one "Gather" or "Blessed" sign. For several years, this worked incredibly well. People renovated entire homes around this aesthetic. The cohesive look created spaces that felt both styled and livable. Relatives complimented your taste. Real estate agents praised your updates. The cultural impact went beyond individual homes. Home improvement stores created entire sections devoted to modern farmhouse supplies. Network television built programming around the aesthetic. Social media accounts dedicated themselves to celebrating and recreating the look. You could purchase modern farmhouse furniture collections, modern farmhouse decor packages, even modern farmhouse cleaning products. Then market saturation changed everything. Every renovation started looking identical. The distinct lack of color became visual monotony rather than peaceful neutrality. What was supposed to feel authentic started feeling as manufactured. Barn doors, originally practical solutions for actual barns, became decorative elements that announced "I renovated between 2018 and 2023. The aesthetic that promised timelessness instead became precisely dated. But saturation was the least of this trend's problem. There are practical problems which emerged slowly. People realized the barn doors don't seal sound or provide real privacy. White everywhere requires constant maintenance and shows every mark. Open shelving means dishware constantly needs dusting. The rustic elements that looked charming in Texas translated awkwardly to other regions and architectural styles. Colonial homes with barn doors just seemed off. Mid-century ranches with shiplap felt funny. Walking into these spaces now feels like entering a time capsule. The white shiplap immediately locks your home in a specific era, and you realize how bad things are when you visit newly renovated homes that don't follow this template. Those homes have spaces with intentional color and rooms that embrace different textures and finishes. They feel personal rather than following a formula. They make your modern farmhouse approach suddenly feel prescribed rather than designed. What you can do going forward is to embrace what works while ditching the identifiable markers. Keep the comfort and livability. Lose the formula. Wood elements can remain without being distressed. White works beautifully when it's not the only color story. Barn doors function fine, but maybe not as replacements for bedroom and bathroom, where they never made practical sense. Design should reflect your actual life, not recreate someone else's idealized farmhouse despite living in a suburban subdivision. And speaking of things that became too recognizable through overuse, let's talk texture. At number 4, bouclé fabric. This went from designer secret to every furniture showroom's default option. Bouclé emerged as the sophisticated texture choice. The nubby looped fabric added dimension to minimalist spaces. It made your home have incredible depth and visual interest, especially in photos. Designers used it strategically on statement chairs or sofas to create focal points. The texture made home feel intentional, curated, and expensive. The textile genuinely has merit. Real bouclé provides actual texture variation. It works across multiple aesthetics from mid-century to contemporary. The looped construction creates patterns that play beautifully with light. Upholstered pieces in quality bouclé feel substantial and crafted. In its original high-end applications, bouclé served specific purposes. A single bouclé lounge chair in an otherwise smooth textured room created contrast. A bouclé ottoman provided tactile interest in a visually quiet space. Designers used the fabric like an accent, and it wasn't common either. But then, this happened. Bouclé underwent mass production, and it was suddenly everywhere. The market became flooded with bouclé chairs, sofas, ottomans, and throw pillows. Every online furniture retailer offered bouclé options. Fast furniture companies created cheaper versions approximating the look. Within 2 years, bouclé wasn't a designer choice. It was the default texture for anyone wanting their space to feel current. Entire rooms became bouclé showcases. What was supposed to add textural interest instead became visual sameness. The fabric that promised sophistication started feeling like you are struggling to design your home rather than actually being designed. The cheaper versions made this even worse. Lower quality bouclé pills quickly, the loops catch and pull. Then generally, homeowners discovered their trendy furniture choice required more care than they'd anticipated. Cleaning becomes difficult without professional help. Pets and children create immediate damage. What looked luxurious in showrooms proved high maintenance in actual use. High-end designers moved on from bouclé months ago. They're pulling in different textures, ribbed velvet, sculpted wool, even unexpected smooth leather, anything but the bouclé. Even current editorial spreads avoid bouclé or use it so sparingly it's barely noticeable. Showrooms that built entire collections around the texture are quietly introducing alternatives. The fabric itself isn't bad, it's just exhausted from overexposure. The best approach is to treat texture as one of many tools rather than a defining characteristic. Mix smooth and nubby surfaces. Combine different weaves and materials. Let textural variety create interest instead of relying on one fabric to do all the work. When a single texture dominates every furniture choice, it stops being interesting and starts being predictable. Speaking of predictability, let's address what happens when one decorative detail conquers everything. If this is saving you from an expensive mistake, hit like and subscribe. Moving on to number 3, scalloped edges that appeared on literally every surface possible. Scallops hit the market aggressively. Mirrors with scalloped frames, tables with scalloped edges, vanities featuring scalloped drawer fronts, chairs with scalloped backs, even lampshades acquired scalloped hems. The curved shell-like detail added femininity and whimsy to otherwise standard pieces. The appeal made sense initially. Scalloped details provided visual softness. They referenced vintage design without being overtly retro. A single scalloped mirror could elevate a simple bathroom. One scalloped occasional table added personality to a neutral room. Used strategically, the detail created charm without overwhelming. High-end furniture makers introduced scalloped pieces as special items within larger collections. Design-conscious consumers bought them as statement pieces. The detail felt fresh because it wasn't everywhere yet. A scalloped mirror in your powder room suggested you paid attention to design trends without being trendy. But strategic use wasn't what happened. Manufacturers applied scallops to everything. Consumers bought multiple scalloped items per room. Suddenly, bathrooms contained scalloped mirrors above scalloped vanities beside scalloped towel racks. Living rooms featured scalloped tables near scalloped chairs beneath scalloped pendant lights. Home goods retailers filled entire sections with scalloped everything. The detail that was supposed to add whimsy instead created visual competition where every piece demanded attention. You went from being sophisticated and original to looking like you were following trends. It took about 2 years for scallops to stop feeling special. Design publications stopped featuring scalloped details. High-end furniture makers have moved toward different curves and edges. And that's not all. Scalloped pieces that were premium offerings 2 years back are now flooding discount markets. The best approach is to vary decorative details. Mix different edge treatments. Combine straight lines with organic curves. Let pieces have distinct personalities rather than all sharing the same identifying mark. One carefully chosen scalloped item reads as intentional. 5 scalloped pieces in the same space reads as, I bought everything from the same collection in 2022. Details should enhance individual pieces, not become the only story your room tells. And on that note, we move on to number 2, matte black hardware and fixtures that became the millennial homeowner's signature move. Matte black felt revolutionary compared to the brushed nickel that dominated previous decades. The finish added instant visual weight and contemporary edge. Cabinet pulls, faucets, light fixtures, door hardware, everything went matte black. The contrast against white cabinets created a dramatic impact. The finish suggested sophistication and design awareness. For several years, this choice made complete sense. Matte black hardware elevated basic renovations, and it was beautiful too. But it wasn't just about how it looked. It worked across multiple design aesthetics from industrial to minimalist, and didn't seem difficult to maintain. The dark finish showed fewer fingerprints and water spots than shiny options. Real estate agents praised the updates as modern and appealing. And this was what precisely killed this trend. It became common pretty quickly. Home improvement stores expanded matte black options across every category. Appliance manufacturers introduced matte black refrigerators and ranges. Lighting companies converted entire collections to matte black finishes. Plumbing fixtures, cabinet hardware, door handles, everything became available in the same flat, dark finish. But design movements always shift. Mixed metal approaches started appearing in high-end projects. Designers began combining warm brass with cool chrome. Oil-rubbed bronze made unexpected returns. The monochrome matte black that felt edgy started feeling one note. Homes where every single finish was matte black began reading as designed by algorithm rather than human choice. The finish revealed practical limitations over time. Matte surfaces showed dust and residue differently than shiny finishes. Water spots become more visible on matte black than designers anticipated. Fingerprints that disappeared on brushed nickel showed clearly on flat black. The low-maintenance promise proved partially false in actual use. Matte black finish hasn't disappeared and might still not completely disappear, but it's just not dominant anymore. Current thinking embraces variety and warmth. Brass showing natural aging, bronze with character, even polished chrome making comebacks in specific applications. The key shift is away from uniformity and toward intentional mixing. And there are practical examples of this. If you check out recently completed high-end renovations, you'll see that they are not avoiding black entirely, but they're using it strategically. One matte black faucet might appear alongside brass cabinet hardware and chrome lighting. The combination feels collected and intentional rather than bought from a single finish family. Moving forward means embracing finish variety. Consider what each element needs functionally and aesthetically, rather than forcing everything into the same category. That kitchen faucet might work beautifully in brass, while cabinet hardware prefers bronze. Bathrooms can mix finishes across fixtures without creating chaos. The goal is spaces that feel thoughtfully assembled over time, rather than ordered complete in one shopping session. And finally, we reach the trend that reveals something fascinating about how design consumption changed. Number 1. Pattern mixing without purpose. Social media taught everyone that more patterns equals more personality. Influencers created visually dense rooms where patterns competed across every surface. Floral wallpaper met geometric rugs, met striped textiles, met printed artwork. The density read as collected and intentional in photos. People assumed complexity meant sophistication. I get why this felt exciting. After years of minimalism, pattern felt rebellious and expressive. Magazines celebrated maximalist approaches. Design accounts gained followers by showcasing increasingly layered interiors. The message became clear. If minimalism was out, maximum pattern must be in. The rise of pattern mixing as a trend came from genuine design evolution. Skilled designers had always layered patterns successfully. The difference was expertise, knowing which patterns share underlying color stories, understanding scale relationships, recognizing when pattern needs rest. These weren't skills you learned from a how-to post. They developed through years of seeing what works and what doesn't. Social media compressed that learning curve to zero. Someone saw a beautifully layered room and assumed they could recreate the effect by simply adding lots of patterns. The nuance got lost. The underlying principles disappeared. What remained was the surface observation. Successful rooms have multiple patterns. Therefore, multiple patterns create successful rooms. Here's what happens when you actually live surrounded by competing patterns. Your eyes never rest. Visual processing never stops. That energizing complexity becomes exhausting chaos. The room that looks superb in photos feels overwhelming in person. Patterns that should complement instead compete. You start avoiding spaces that require constant visual parsing. The maximalism that seems sophisticated reveals itself as sensory overload. Morning coffee in a room where 4 different patterns clash creates low-level stress. You can't identify why the space feels agitating, but your nervous system registers the visual conflict. Reading becomes harder because patterns in your peripheral vision demand attention. Conversations feel slightly more exhausting because your brain is working to filter unnecessary visual information. The critical difference is intention. Skilled designers layer patterns with careful attention to scale, color relationships, and visual breathing room. They understand when patterns complement and when they conflict. The amateur approach assumed quantity created the same effect as expertise. It doesn't. A well-designed maximalist room might feature a large-scale floral on wallpaper, medium-scale geometric on upholstery, and small-scale stripe on pillows, all sharing a common color palette with solid elements providing visual rest. Pattern serves hierarchy. Scale creates rhythm. Color unifies disparate elements. The failed version throws together whatever patterns feel exciting individually. A bold floral competes with an equally bold geometric. Color stories conflict. Scale feels random. Every pattern screams for equal attention. There's no hierarchy, no rhythm, no rest. For spaces that are already committed to pattern overload, editing becomes essential. Remove pieces that don't genuinely contribute. Find the underlying color story and eliminate patterns that fight it. Create visual rest areas where eyes can recover. Let patterns have space to make their impact rather than forcing them to compete constantly. Patterns should create rhythm and interest, not constant visual static. If you're looking at your recently renovated space and recognizing several of these trends, don't panic. Most are fixable without complete overhauls. Sometimes the solution is strategic editing, removing the most identifiable trend markers while keeping what genuinely works. Sometimes it's adding new elements that dilute the trend concentration. The broader lesson matters more than specific trends. Design works best when it reflects your actual life and preferences rather than chasing what's current. By the time something saturates the market enough that you notice it everywhere, it's already heading toward dated territory. Which of these trends do you still love despite knowing they're fading? Or what trend would you add to this list? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.